go ahead and get started here. Hello, my name is Bryan Hirsch. I'm the Deputy Chief Digital Officer for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and this session is called Creating a Single Face of Government Across Multiple Websites and Technology Stacks. So let's go ahead and start with a survey of the problem space here. So why create a single face of government? Maybe you don't perceive there to be a problem. Maybe you don't see that there are many faces of government. I shouldn't presume, right? So here are a couple of stories that I think represent the basic landscape and the status quo. Number one. Let's say you need a driver's license. Where do you go for a driver's license? DMV. In Massachusetts, we call it the RMV. Great. So now let's say you want to become a rideshare driver. Where do you think you go to get the information you need to do whatever you need to do to become a rideshare driver?
Commercial licenses?
Sure, commercial licenses. Where would you look for that?
Wherever that is.
Probably on the DMV part of the website, right? So if you want to become a rideshare driver in the state of Massachusetts, you need approval from the Department of Public Utilities. That's under Energy and Environmental Affairs. So until recently, you had to leave the RMV's website, which used to look like this on the left, and then go to a microsite that looked like this on the right, and find your way to the Transportation Network Company Division of EEA's microsite to find out what you need to do to become a rideshare driver. Putting information about how to become a rideshare driver apart from all of the other driving information is like putting an orange in the snacks aisle in the supermarket. So having RMV and having DPU interact with drivers in this way is one example of the many faces of government. I'm going to call problem number one the orange problem. Here's problem number two. So for this one, let's watch a recording from a product test that we did with a tax preparer on the brand new mass.gov site that was launched last fall. This test is during tax season. So let's see if we can click over to it. Sorry, I'm having trouble finding my mouse here.
Okay. What's an example of something that you've come across that was like really easy to do, or something that you liked about the site?
About that?
Mm-hmm. If it is.
I love this, like you did, what they did here, because if that's the stuff we're looking for, which I'm assuming they did because that's where most people go. And it's relatively easy. But at the same time, you know what's missing from that road? Department. So to some extent, if I need taxes, I go to taxes. But let's say I know I need DOR.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you hear one that says department?
Mm-hmm.
And it's good, Secretary of State, DOR, Treasury, Audit, with all the departments are. Because sometimes you don't know where you want to go, and it's beautiful. And sometimes you know exactly where you want to go, and you have no idea what that is.
All right, so it's tax season. She wants to find tax forms. And for this one, she's spot on. The idea behind the new navigation is that someone shouldn't have to know the structure of the state bureaucracy to find the information that they need on the website. But for a power user like her, who visits more frequently, who knows exactly the department that she wants to go to, we've actually made things a little bit more confusing and cumbersome at times. So how many people here have shopped at IKEA? Yes? Okay. So I call this next problem the IKEA problem. IKEA stores walk visitors through the store through a long winding path, and for a shopper who only goes once in a while, those installations are nice and user-friendly, but if you know exactly what you want and you know exactly where you want to go, and you're not allowed to take those staff shortcuts to just get there quickly, that could be a really frustrating experience. So the IKEA problem is a little more nuanced. We don't have 300 microsites on mass.gov anymore, so the problem here isn't too many faces of government per se. The problem is an expressionless face. So an experience that doesn't acknowledge the different circumstances in a different relationship can be just as frustrating as many, many faces. Here's number 3. So this is a true story. In 2009, a young entrepreneur registers his small business as an S corporation in Massachusetts. He faithfully pays his taxes to the Department of Revenue, the website on the left, for 10 years. He faithfully pays unemployment insurance to DUA, the Department of Unemployment Assistance, on the right. And recently, this person decides it's time to shut down his business. So he's never shut a business down before. So he called all the different government agencies that he had had any interactions with in opening the business in the first place. And do you know what he found out? He found out that because he had failed to pay a registration fee with the Secretary of the Commonwealth in the middle, he did not actually have limited liability protection, which was the whole reason that he had gotten incorporated in the first place. So for people not familiar with the details of starting a business, this is like an airline selling boarding passes separate from seats on the airplane. Why would you sell these things separately, right? If you need both to fly, like think about how frustrating it would be to get to the ticket counter and you've got a boarding pass and someone says, where's your seat? So having DOR, DUA, the Secretary of State all interface separately with businesses this way is confusing to say the least. And what if this person had been sued? His home, his life savings were exposed and he had no idea. So I'm going to call problem number 3 the plane ticket problem. So there's a survey of the landscape. The orange problem, the IKEA problem, the plane ticket problem. Can we agree that this is a problem? Yes. Okay, so today more than 76% of people interact with the state of Massachusetts online. So that is far more than any other medium. And we've gone from 0 to 76% in less than 20 years. We are only just beginning to understand how this is changing government's relationship with constituents and how it's changing people's expectations. So let's look at all of these analogies in the context of a relationship. The orange problem is about look and feel. Look and feel sets expectations. When an interaction doesn't meet expectations, it can be confusing, it's jarring. If a grocery store is putting its oranges in the snack aisle, what other products might be scattered about? Am I really in a supermarket or is this a flea market? Is that really the fruit section or is it really just the big bin section? I can't help wondering, what else don't I know? Am I even actually in the right place? The IKEA problem is about navigability, which it turns out is about more than just usability. So usability is key, but navigability is also about being seen. It's about making me feel like this website was made for me. It's going to anticipate my needs. Or giving me cues that decidedly this website was not made for me. And then the plane ticket problem is about the platform's success criteria. Success metrics have to shine a light on alignment or misalignment between what the platform provides and what the constituents need. So if a passenger needs both tickets to fly, it's not enough for the platform to just make sure that we're selling seats and boarding passes. We need to make sure we're selling the same number of seats and boarding passes. We can't see these kinds of things with our eyes, but we can see these kinds of things in the numbers. And so these are the kinds of success metrics that we need to make sure that we're meeting people's expectations. So when we talk about creating a single face of government, what we really mean is addressing the issues to fix the dysfunctions in this relationship today. So now I'm going to talk through the work in progress that we're doing here. This is not a perfectly solved problem. We've made progress on each of these different fronts. So I'll talk a little bit about what have we gotten done, what are we doing next, and what are some of the unsolved problems that we see looming in the distance. And maybe some of you have some solutions to these things, which I'd love to hear. Okay, so look and feel. Look and feel is about setting expectations. I need to know where I am, I know where I want to go, and I know what I need to do. So I know the oranges are in the produce section. Before our project started, mass.gov was a portal website, a site that points to lots of other websites. We had 300 microsites hosted on mass.gov, and portal websites were all the rage ones. But in 2018, do you guys know what we call a website that points you to other websites? Sorry, louder? Google, right? Search. So in the portal world, a rideshare driver needed to find her way to the TNC division of the DPU under EEA on their microsite, like finding an orange in a snack aisle. And just last month, the RMV, the DMV, we call it RMV, redirected massrmv.com to their new organizational page on the new mass.gov. So now the look and feel of the rideshare information and the look and feel of all of the other driving information is perfectly consistent. And you can find all of the information about driving in the same place. And because this is an example of the background checks that you need to become a rideshare driver all actually happen online, this is all we need to do to present a single face of government, this one change. So presenting a consistent look and feel across web properties goes a really long way to setting people's expectations. Here are some examples of applications that are off of mass.gov that have tried to make the leap to a common look and feel by extending visual design concepts from mass.gov within their own custom implementations. So the RMV, which is on the right, just replaced their big mainframe system with this new system and a new website. And then the tax connector from the Department of Revenue on the left also just updated their look and feel to be more consistent with typography and the colors on mass.gov. Here are a bunch of screenshots of some of the applications that have not started their way down this journey yet. So some of the big ones are unemployment insurance online, the Health and Human Services virtual gateway, which recipients of food assistance use, the Secretary of State's website, and the business portal. So the interest and the initiative that we've seen from the screenshots on the previous slide from the RMV and from the DOR is really awesome, really positive, really great. But even in the best of possible circumstances, keeping all these different applications in sync, providing a consistent look and feel across the whole ecosystem, if we're doing these things with custom implementations one by one, at best, that's potentially a lot of work. And at worst, the design can still evolve in really separate directions, and we can end up a little ways down the road, with very different look and feel and inconsistent experiences. So we think that the future looks something more like what you see with Twitter Bootstrap or Google Material Design, a constellation of websites using some shared set of resources and assets. And by default, not only do we hope that we're not reinventing the wheel and inventing things from scratch over and over and over again, but hopefully we're also making it a lot easier to keep things in sync. So in the fall, we're going to begin collaborating more closely with a handful of government agencies who are looking to make this leap to a common design system. And we're going to be working with them to figure out how to put some of these kinds of pieces in place so that if they've got a modern build process, they can pull in assets and keep things in sync in a nicer, easier sort of a way. So before we actually ask people to start doing that, we're eating our own dog food and we're trying this out on applications that we control first. So here's what that has looked like. Mass.gov's theme is using markup from a component library called Mayflower. And Mayflower is built with Pattern Lab. It's live at mayflower.digital.mass.gov, which you can see here. And in theory, it's platform agnostic. But so before we recommend that people start pulling this into their own build processes, So before we start asking people to use this in their own build processes. We're trying it out on ourselves. And here you can see some early examples of this. So the very first, top right, was building this little tiny wait time widget, which is iframed into mass.gov. So this is actually a simple standalone application running on GitHub Pages. And this was the first time that we actually took a second application that was not mass.gov and used the exact same assets and built them into some other application. And so this was a great way to work out the kinks with getting those assets up onto a CDN and figuring out how to incorporate it into a site the way that a lot of people are familiar with using jQuery, say pointing at a CDN. So next, we wrote some quick start documentation, which you can see on the right, for people who make little widgets and sites and pages like this who want to embed their own content into mass.gov. And going through that process was really helpful to figure out what it takes to set someone up to actually use these resources. And we've done a handful of additional projects to start figuring out what works, what doesn't work, what are the different ways to encourage people to use this. Our best and our most thorough implementation is search.mass.gov, which is a React-based single-page application that's using Mayflower. So this is our strongest reference implementation. It's visually generating Mayflower markup. So, all the way down to every button, every link, every screen size. It's exactly the same as the design system powering mass.gov. So here's what's going on this page and a sense of how we believe this will work as we get this set up on more and more applications. Search.mass.gov is being powered by Google's Search API. So it's actually looking at 68 totally different web properties. And then the promoted results and advanced filters, these cards that you see at the top of the search results, are being powered by API endpoints at mass.gov. So just starting to dip our toes into some decoupled content management there. And the way that we interact with Google's API is any website that implements metadata to Google's specs gets surfaced to us in the API that we are consuming from Google. So we've published our own specifications, basically keys and values that we ask people to put into their markup. And anyone who does that can get these richer, more interactive, more helpful treatments to the search results that appear on this search application. So one day soon, anyone who is implementing our component libraries will get updates and changes into their application through their build process by default. So, out of the box, people will have all of the right metadata to get richer search results showing up on the search pages. But then you can also imagine, as the design system is evolving, or as the needs of this application are evolving, let's say we introduce a new feature like 5-star ratings. So in an ecosystem where each different website is custom, you can imagine if everyone has to add a new element, a new attribute, figure out how to get the data from their application into that attribute, and application by application, that's a custom process and a different process. It's a huge amount of work to actually get the 70 websites that this is searching to power those 5-star ratings. But now imagine for all of the organizations that implement our component library, when they do a new build and they pull in non-breaking changes from the latest minor release, they'll just get the right new attribute with an empty value, but they'll get the right stuff into their markup. And so now the level of effort that goes into actually getting data into that page so that we can power 5-star ratings, is so much easier. So that's what we think this ecosystem could look like. And in a landscape like this, the look and feel is more consistent. We can shift to, by default, keeping things in sync and evolving things in sync. And this isn't just for shiny new features like 5-star ratings. It could be for basic usability improvements, improving the touch experience for expanding all the accordions, improving accessibility in the ways that we've implemented it. So that's where we think we're headed. In terms of unresolved questions and unanswered questions, We know that every agency does not need to have its own brand, right? There's a huge value to more consistent look and feel. But we also know that there are times when it probably does make sense to have a separate brand. So I'll give you one example, for a marketing campaign. That's a really good example of, you might want to have a separate website with its own look and feel. We don't have really clear ideas about how to draw these boundaries, and we know we need to explore these boundaries a little bit further. So RMV has really strong brand recognition. Many departments don't. When is that actually a value add to constituents? When can we actually give people guidance that it's valuable to have a different look and feel or a separate website? So that's look and feel. Now let's talk a little bit about navigability. So navigability is about more than usability, right? It's about making people feel seen. So not only do I know how to use this website, I know that it's meant for me. I see that it's anticipating my needs and trying to give me the things that I'm looking for. If I know the shortcuts, just like IKEA, they get it, it'll let me take the shortcuts. So Mass.gov is at the center of the Commonwealth's digital ecosystem, and its purpose is to get constituents to the services that they need as quickly and easily as possible. So on the portal website, all 300 different microsites had their own navigation. They had their own structure, and if you were someone who comes to the website regularly and you know the exact department that you want to go to and you know exactly the tax form that you're looking for, that old world arrangement was actually not so bad for you. But if you're among the 80% of people who really only come to mass.gov 10 times or fewer per year, you don't know the name of the department that you want to go to, you don't necessarily know exactly how to get the thing that you're looking for, you're in this bottom left quadrant, the average constituents and businesses, then this new navigation is a positive improvement for you. So this 2x2 just depicts the basic landscape as we understand it right now. 80% of the traffic being people who are not coming that frequently and are probably not necessarily subject matter experts in the content that they're consuming. And then in the top right, the group that we now call the For My Job users, people who come frequently, people who are probably coming to do something related to their job. They're the people who want technical information. A lot of these people are government employees. For those folks, as you saw from the video earlier, the website actually is feeling a little bit confusing to them with our updates. So we used this tool called TreeJack to test out our information architecture and figure out how to build out our main navigation focused on that bottom left quadrant. And navigation is not just about the menu, it also includes all of these other kinds of wayfinding, links on different parts of the page that will take you to the other related parts of the website. In this example, we've got a how-to page, which tells you how to get the service that you need. So we did a lot of testing and work to figure out, do these actually help people complete the transaction or the task they're trying to complete? And what we now know is that in this top right, we need to spend some more time and attention figuring out how to deliver similar kinds of improvements to what we did for the bottom left quadrant for these For My Job power users, people who want more technical information, people who know the organization they want to go to, people who want to take the IKEA shortcuts. So here is a screenshot of the product test that we saw earlier. And thinking about this idea that navigability is about more than usability, it's also about being seen. So when our tester comes to the conclusion that this navigation is so easy for someone else, someone who's less technical, someone who doesn't know exactly where they're trying to go, someone who doesn't know exactly what they want, she's concluding this website is not for me. And so she sort of checks out. She doesn't realize that actually the exact link that she's describing is on the page in two different places right in front of her. So she's anticipating something that would say departments, and we obviously are calling them state organizations or state offices. So there's some usability improvements we need to make on our end. But this is a really great example of, if we get this right, when we get this right, people should be thinking to themselves, this is for me. This is anticipating my needs. I should probably look around a little bit more and see if I can find the thing that I'm looking for, right? So there are a number of improvements in the works. Some of them have been released over the last 6 months. A few more are coming out really soon, and we think we've got our sights on a number of improvements that are really going to improve the experience for this for my job power user kind of a group. So here are a couple looks at the kinds of things that are coming up next in our releases. We've got a bunch of work that has gone into organizing large amounts of content into collections that for the people who really want the technical information, the people who don't want the simplified, don't need to know anything about government content. These are for, you want the regulations. You want to know what organization published the regulations. You want to be able to go to the organization that published the regulations and then find all of the things, navigating through the state bureaucracy because you know how to navigate it. So collections of technical content, as you see on these 3 screens. Another major change that just got released is giving people the ability to narrow the scope of their searches to a particular organization. So these more technical users frequently just want content from a particular organization or a particular government agency. So now we associate all of our content with particular organizations who produce it and let people interact with that by narrowing their search results or search parameters. Coming soon, we're going to be putting a sub-navigation menu onto the organizational pages that will be more like the microsites that we used to have for the people who go directly to those organizational pages, but different in that this doesn't run counter to all of the services-oriented content that we've got. It's still one set of content powering all of the different ways people interact with it. And the navigation is going to be consistent now across all 300 different organizational pages on the website. So we've got a navigation that's like a superset of all of the different navigation cues that people might need, and the organizations can use whatever part of that superset meets their needs. So it's going to be consistent from agency to agency to agency. So in terms of unsolved problems, questions of when sites and navigation are really meaningful to keep together and when they should be separate is also a place where we've been really focused on mass.gov. And as we start to step back and look at the whole ecosystem and think beyond mass.gov, there's a lot of gray area to explore here too. So in the example on the screen, you see Amazon.com. They fit an amazing amount of stuff onto that website, right? And they let you filter the things that you're looking for by departments, and anything you want to buy you can find on Amazon.com. But even Amazon has stuff that they say doesn't fit in Amazon.com. It belongs in a different website. So the 2 examples on the right are services.amazon.com, a website for the people who are selling things through Amazon, and then Amazon Web Services. So we know that there's a huge amount of usability benefit to providing this, consistent navigation experience and to acknowledging these different kinds of users all in one mass.gov place. But at some point, you hit these boundaries where it does make sense to have a different website. It does make sense to have that different website have its own model for navigation. And we don't really have good guidance, clear guidance to offer to people today about where to draw those boundaries. And then back to the plane ticket problem. So success metrics. Success metrics align our platform, align what our platform is designed to provide with what our constituents need, right? So we can't stop at setting expectations. We have to meet expectations. If we don't meet expectations, we're losing people's trust. We're damaging our relationship. So in the example I gave, a person wouldn't expect that you could buy a boarding pass without a seat. So when transactions happen online, rather than between human beings, you don't have your eyes and the physical interaction that you'd have at a ticket counter to see that interaction and to see the person in front of you get frustrated. But we can figure these things out with the numbers, right? We can see if we're selling the same number of tickets for seats and for boarding the airplane. So our thinking about mass.gov is all content has a purpose, not just mass.gov. All of the content in our ecosystem, all content has a purpose, and when content comes into contact with our constituents, it's either living up to its purpose or it's not. And so we can use web analytics to identify these places of, are we living up to people's expectations? Are we meeting their needs or not? Has anyone heard the saying, you can't manage what you can't measure? So up until 2 years ago, it was really, really hard to measure the interactions between state government and our constituents. So optimizing a page or any amount of content to meet people's needs was very ad hoc. All of the content was big blobs of content. Those big blobs of content were jacks of all trades, masters of none. Today, with the new platform that we've launched, we haven't perfectly solved the problem of the young entrepreneur, but we are giving departments and agencies tools that make it a lot easier to start measuring these interactions and understanding what's actually happening with users and where we are in our meeting people's needs. So, before, gleaning all of these kinds of insights took a huge amount of knowledge of something like Google Analytics and the website and a huge amount of time to put together reports and things like this. So we've done a lot of work to try to take some of that heavy lifting off of our users' shoulders and make it a lot easier for people to get at this kind of data. So being data-driven, user-centric sounds great, but what does it really look like? Here's what we think it looks like. So in terms of work that we've completed to get us to where we are today, here is the beginning of what it looked like to build our new analytics dashboards. So early on, we built these proof of concept dashboards that could be embedded into Drupal, right into the authoring experience. These are built with a tool called Superset. It was originally made by Airbnb, and now it's an open source Apache project. And these were mostly used for technically validating that we could just connect all of the pipes and bring this experience right into the CMS. Then last fall, when we went live, we did a series of experiments. So between October and December, we set out to find underperforming content, improve the content, and then prove with data that we had made improvements, and then come up with repeatable recipes that our customers could follow to improve the content in the same sort of way. So all in all, the experiments were pretty successful. We did 15 experiments, 14 of 15 were successful and demonstrated some amount of improvements. In this page, what you see is traffic to request unemployment benefits doubles after we made some revisions to the language in their titles and short descriptions and promoted this page on more related pages. Here's another example on the cancel your car registration page, cancel the vehicle registration page. We made some edits that clarified that canceling your registration is the same as returning your plates. A lot of people just didn't know that returning your plates and canceling your registration is the exact same thing. So here you can see that the number of people who report, yes, I found what I was looking for, in the little survey at the bottom of the page, goes up dramatically when we made those small improvements. So in aggregate, 73% of our performance experiments increased positive feedback, 76% of the improvements increased page traffic, and 26% increased the outcome rates on the tested pages, the completion of whatever task that page is made for. So that's a really good start, but next the question is, can we package all of this information up in a way that will allow our partners, the park rangers, the epidemiologists, the experts in fields other than web publishing, to understand how their content is performing and then be able to take specific actions to improve their content to get these kinds of results. So in the next quarter, last January through March, we ran 150 pilot experiments with 4 customer organizations. The idea with that, in the same way that you might test a design with a wireframe or do other kinds of usability testing like the tree jack test, think of this as like usability testing for our dashboards. So if we put these kinds of charts in front of our users, can they interpret them and take action? Is that really actionable information for them? So here's how that went. We took 9 different charts, 9 different indicators that we came up with in the fall, and we package them up into concepts that we think make sense as the outcomes we're aiming for, and concepts that will make sense to the rest of our customers. So findability, outcomes, content quality, and satisfaction are the 4 categories that we group the indicators under. Findability means, are constituents able to find the thing they're trying to find? Outcomes is, are our pages effective at enabling constituents to complete whatever task they came here to complete? Satisfaction is the constituents' experience fast, easy, and wicked awesome? And content quality is, are we actually providing people reasonable, intelligible, easy to understand content? So I had some statistics that I wanted to share with you, and it looks like I lost them from my notes. 80% of the 150 experiments were successful. So at the end of a quarter of running these ad hoc experiments with the 4 different government agencies, we declared the 9 different charts we were using usable, the categories basically usable, and then in the spring, between April and June, we set out to actually automate the work of creating these dashboards so that we could provide these to all of our customers at scale. And so here you can see what the first iteration of this looks like. We released this on July 1st, and right now this summer, this is the first quarter where every single user of the CMS has access to these kinds of statistics about how their content is or isn't performing. So there's a lot that we can do to keep making this more robust and comprehensive, but we think it's a really good start. For the first time ever this year also, we've rolled out targeted performance outcomes that we're shooting for the end of the year to move the dial across the whole platform. And here on the screen, I'll just sort of walk you through a little bit how we've organized it. On the left, you see an overall performance score. So this is based on ratings that come from all of the different performance metrics from all of those different main categories. And then across the tabs, you can see there's a tab for findability, there's a tab for user satisfaction, there's a tab for content quality and outcomes, and you can drill in to each one of those to see, I think I've got a slide sort of scrolls you through it. Each one of those walks you through all of the different components that add up to the score for that category. And then the very last tab says improve, tips for improving your content. And so if someone sees that they've got a score that's lower than a 4, then there are tons of things that people can do that are really low-hanging fruit to have a major impact on content performance and user experience. Things like turning acronyms into simple language words, putting buttons for calls to action where someone needs to take an action and there's not a button on the page, creating links so that relevant pages are linked to other relevant pages, finding and fixing broken links, tons and tons of low-hanging fruit that has a dramatic impact on these different metrics. So if we can get 100 of our 400 content authors using these dashboards and interacting with this content in this way, we think it will be a major, major improvement. So, big steps in the right direction, but there's still a lot of work ahead. So here's a little bit about where we're going next and what the future looks like for our analytics platform. So on mass.gov, today we're only measuring the performance of pages. But people don't just visit one page and then leave. Usually, frequently people go to a couple different pages. That they have a journey that strings together a few different stops before they get the thing they need. So here's a map of a user journey. So think of mass.gov being a slice of a couple of the dots in the middle of this. So we need to come up with performance indicators that let us know, is the journey effective, right? Not just is the page effective. Maybe anyone who gets to this page has a great experience, but if half of the people trying to get to this page never find it, they're trapped in a dead end, or they give up somewhere else. We need to know that too, and we need to figure out how to address those problems. So by the end of this year, looking ahead to the next major version of these dashboards going out next summer, we'd like to come up with some way to measure journey performance and surface this information to authors in a way that is similar to what we're doing for page performance. Then beyond mass.gov, we, as we're working on creating this single face of government across many different web properties, we also want to have these kinds of insights across the whole web ecosystem. So we're doing pilots this year to put some cross-domain tracking in place. First, we're eating our own dog food, doing this with search.mass.gov and mass.gov. In the fall, we'll spin up a few more pilots with customers that have transactional applications. And by the end of the year, hopefully, we'll come up with some reasonable way to surface cross-domain analytics that we hope will help people understand, not only does someone get lost inside mass.gov, but of all the people that leave mass.gov and go into, say the RMV's application to get driver's licenses or car renewals, is someone getting stuck, trapped, confused, lost, etc. And then, last but definitely not least, something that we're piloting this year and have grand aspirations for what this could mean in the future, although we really won't know until we try, is doing real, true, end-to-end user experience research, zeroing in on a particular government service, for example, unemployment, and mapping out the whole user experience, all of the stops between a person loses their job and then actually receiving benefits from unemployment insurance in the mail. What are all of the stops? How do we map it out in a journey map that looks like this? And then get all of the stakeholders around the table, even if it's from different departments and different agencies or even different branches of government, and really help people understand their constituents' experience of their services and zero in on a couple targeted places to make improvements. So that's the big next frontier. We hope to end the year with at least one successful pilot of that kind of a project. So digital services mission is to leverage the best information and technology to make constituents' interactions with government fast, easy, and wicked awesome. And day to day around our office, we talk a lot about fast and easy. Wicked awesome is a little bit more elusive. So single face of government, catapulting people's relationships with government into the 21st century, I think that's where a lot of the meat of wicked awesome is. We figured out some things that seem to be working for us. We still have a lot to learn. We would love to learn from any of you if you have ideas or suggestions. If people want to collaborate. We would love to share our code. We would love to look at your code. We would love to talk to you about any of your ideas if you think you've got ideas about some of the things that are unsolved problems here. So thank you very much. Please get in touch if you want to get in touch. Here are some links to some of the things I was talking about. And I think we've got 20 minutes if people want to, or 15 minutes, if anyone has any questions. Not a single question? Please.
Are you effectively empowering the agencies to build and change their own sites? Is it like a digital style guide effectively, what you showed earlier?
Do you mean on mass.gov or the sites that are external to mass.gov?
Well, for mass.gov agencies, or do they have their own web groups?
Yeah.
In North Carolina, Billy Bolton, he created a digital commons project.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm just curious if that's kind of the approach mass.gov is also taking.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you after about what's going on in North Carolina.
Yeah.
So we're not using groups, we're not using organic groups, and we actually don't have any boundaries between what people can and can't author or edit based on organization. So in the way that the old platform works, and I think what you're describing is, organization A has their organizational site and their organization's content. That's all they can edit. And then organization B has their own, fiefdom. And that's not how ours works. So we actually have really proactively tried to break down those walls because we saw a lot of duplicative and sometimes conflicting and confusing content with those boundaries in place. So what we have is 400 people in the system, and you're either an author or an editor. So if you're an author, you can draft content, but you can't publish it. If you're an editor, you can approve publication of content. So people can propose drafts and changes to other agencies' pages if they want to, and they can also watch each other's pages. They can create these organizational pages that look like microsites. So if you know that you want Department of Revenue, like the CPA from the product test, she can go directly to mass.gov/DOR, and it presents all the DOR's content in a very organization-centric way. But all that same content is also powering the services-oriented, constituent-centric content elsewhere. And so the DOR content, even though we know that there's some stuff that really is just DORs and that they produced. It's not separate from all of the other stuff. It's not its own space. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I saw a hand go up in the back.
Yeah, can you just describe a bit more about, maybe how the structure of the
Yeah.
these other essentially product owners consuming your kind of scheme here? What's the perception? What's your sense of mind? Like, what are the challenges there in terms of kind of pushing out this vision to them?
Yeah. What is the perception, buy-in, and challenges pushing out this vision of single look and feel to the other agencies?
And like for a lot of our agencies, we're very federated. It sounds like your structure is similar.
Yep.
So that obviously presents kind of a cultural challenge to adoption.
Yep. I'm sorry, did you want me to say something to the group?
No, 25 women, 40 men. Okay.
Okay. So groups have been pretty receptive. So the idea of not having to rebuild a design from scratch, and having some group in the Commonwealth
Use to do that process. I mean, what can you suggest to us to kind of go through that process?
to make the journey maps. So I don't have any good recommendations for you right now. There's software that's made for generating these maps.
Yep.
I've seen a couple examples that I really like of sort of the artifact that you produce at the end. I have this picture in my mind of getting people around a table from different agencies with a one-pager that's got the journey map, and above it says how people feel at every stop along the way, and a little bit of sort of business insight at the top about what they're doing at the different stops in their journey, things like this. But we haven't actually produced one of these for an end-to-end experience, or sat people around the table to see if the way we think we want to present it makes sense to people who don't do this kind of a thing, in their day-to-day work. So that's a lot of what we're exploring this year, and hopefully we'll have some kind of repeatable process for this time next year. So I'd be happy to talk to you about it again at next year's GovCon if you want.
You made a distinction about rating the sites and whether people got what they wanted out of the site, and then this journey map, the end-to-end. But I guess from my perspective, I wouldn't rate things differently. I mean, if I get stuck, then I'm going to complain. How do you make the distinction? In other words, you might be rating it by pages, but me as a user, I'm just going to think of it as a single entity, and when I get stuck, I get stuck. How do you make the distinction?
The distinction between page performance and journey performance?
Yes.
So the question is, for the user, there's not a distinction between page performance and journey performance. So why are you guys distinguishing between these things to rate them?
Well, I'm just saying my experience, and not
Sure.
that there isn't a difference, but that when I get frustrated with the page, I would put my comment there. I wouldn't. Yeah. Conceptually, I wouldn't have a difference.
Yeah. For the constituent, of course, there's no difference. It's either we hit the mark or we miss the mark. On the analytics side, it's a lot harder to measure a journey than a page. At least that was, as we waded into it, that was our experience of it, was that figuring out if a page is doing what it's supposed to was a lot easier for us last year than figuring out if a whole journey, things just get a lot more complicated. They're just exponentially more variables. And so, with all analytics problems, you have this sort of mountain of raw information, which are events, clicks and scrolls and backs and forwards and mouse overs, and trying to add those up in a way that you can put together a real, meaningful, accurate model of a user's experience that's represented in a chart and then tells you, first of all, just getting into the chart is not trivial, but then having that chart have a meaningful, opinionated assessment of is this good or bad that they clicked so many times, or that they went here or not there. There's just a lot of stuff there. So we started with page performance because it was the fastest, easiest way to get actionable information out into the world and start doing something that's data-driven. broken links, writing at a 6th grade reading level is not the be-all, end-all of content quality. But those two, and that's all we're doing right now, to rate content quality. But those two things are huge, huge problems for us right now. Like, we've had such a dramatic impact on customers' experience, on constituents' experiences, by fixing broken links and helping people write to a 6th grade reading level rather than like a college reading level. So we're just sort of starting with what's actionable and achievable right now. And when Journey's integrated, hopefully constituents will just have a much better experience because we'll be that much better at it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and what are you using for your metrics?
In terms of capturing the metrics? So today we're using Google Analytics. We're starting to run into the limitations of free Google Analytics. So we're starting to figure out what a procurement looks like and what kinds of requirements to put into the procurement. We're using Superset to create those visualizations and embed those. Sorry, Greg, I see someone behind you had her hand up earlier, and then Greg, and I think that's probably it. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, what's the reasoning behind trying to get your own dashboard and whole platform built for the contributors when there is services out there that simply do it more on a visual scale, which is easily
So what's the idea behind building out the whole platform when there are integrators? Do you mean the analytics platform?
Well, it's the analytics or the broken links and whatever, like this services out there. Do that on a more visual scale. And why are you trying to build it in-house?
Got it. Yeah, so there are tools out there that visualize these kinds of things and do it on a bigger scale. Why are we trying to build it in-house? We have absolutely no interest in recreating any of those things and would much rather buy that stuff and just use it off the shelf. The scores that we're getting for the grading, the reading level, and the broken links are both coming from a tool called Site Improve that we use. So, usually what you get from those things is something more intelligible than raw event data. It's not just clicks and mouse overs, but it's broken links and reading level. But it still takes a lot of knowledge about what the content is for to come up with an opinionated judgment of, is this content fulfilling its purpose or not? And so that's the layer that we're providing, is because we know what any given page is for, we can actually do a huge amount of the heavy lifting of pulling the right indicators in, figuring out how to compare the comparable things, and then show you, here's where you're at, and here's where you compare to other people, or here's how you compare to the outcomes that you're after. And you can't actually get that kind of stuff off the shelf from any, Tableau, Site Improve, Google Analytics. All of these things are really powerful tools that give you a lot of interesting stuff to interact with, but you still have to apply a lot of information to that to get actionable insights from it, and that's what we're trying to do. Sure. Greg?
You talked about the journey, the customer journey from end to end and that website. Have you had any success tying the data from the website out to external indicators, calling stuff, comment cards left in drivers, in DMV offices, any of that kind of stuff to try and measure the actual impact of site changes on the outside world of site?
Yeah. So have we done anything to connect the web analytics with offline data, call centers, service centers, etc.? So we have tons of interest in doing it. We did one pilot last year to dip our toes in and try and start that. And then in the end, that organization wasn't really able to use it as part of the campaign that they were running. Not for technical reasons, but just because of how their campaign was sort of going and their own reasons. But looking ahead this year, we do have a call center project that's about to come online where we'll bring in call center information. And we definitely have a vision for service by service doing that wherever the information is available. And then actually in the system, we can swap out the default dashboard for a more customized dashboard for the particular service with metrics like that. Thank you all for the questions and discussion. I think there's someone else in 5 minutes, so thank you.